Excuse me. All right.
Can just say my name is Jay Light, and this is Walks of Life.
I'm Jay Light, and this is Walks of Life. How many times do you think you're going to thank me on this podcast? I'm going to go over under.
Oh my God, he knows
10
me
times.
well. I think that's pretty fair.
You want to take the over or the under?
I mean, smart money's on over, but
All right.
just,
I'm going to
we'll
take the
go
under. I believe in you.
Oh, ooh, putting the pressure on early. Just so everybody knows, I know I just had you say it a million times, but what's your name and who are you?
I'm Jay Light. I'm a stand-up comedian and comedy writer.
Rock on. You're also a good friend of mine, and we're sitting here in Greenblatt's Deli on the first floor on Sunset and Laurel, right across the way from Trader Joe's, and it's a nice overcast day.
Classic overcast LA. I missed this weather. Oh God! As soon as I saw that it was raining today, I was thrilled. I love it when it rains in LA.
Same here, man. It's just such a refreshing thing too, because it's been so hot and gross.
I'm so glad I don't have to run my air conditioning in my apartment anymore.
Always a good.
I even turned the fan off today. It was a big step.
Rock on, man.
It never happens.
It's been a couple months since you've had to turn that on, I imagine. But welcome back. This is how the rest of the country is. It's nice, right? See weather. We're probably going to cut most of this because, admittedly, I got off the rails a little bit. Yeah.
I don't think we're going to cut any of it. Why cut it? We're off. It's a podcast.
That's true, man. We should have these weird, authentic conversations. And anybody that's overheard me having a conversation with anybody knows that occasionally it'll get a little weird. Or, you know what? Fuck it. We're keeping it. All of this.
Good. That's the spirit.
So, how do we really get to know each other and meet each other? I mean, granted, it's grown a lot, I think, since working together with the Laugh-In. But do you remember when I first met you?
Yeah, it was at the Comedy Store when I still worked there.
Yeah.
And you were coming in and hanging out and watching shows, and you introduced yourself to me. The first time I really remember you introducing yourself to me was when I was working a main room show. And I just saw you around there a lot, and then we got to talking, and we talked. You asked me questions about comedy and life and stuff, and you started running a show, the Long Beach Laugh-In, aforementioned.
That's right. And
you had me host it, and I was your regular host for that show for a number of shows.
Thank you so much.
One
dude.
thank you. We're counting them out. That's the first one.
We got one.
And so I was hosting that for almost the full run of it so far. There's a couple times that I haven't. There's one you had me headline it, and there's one or a couple that I was out of town for.
Yeah. A couple, I think there was like 3 or 4.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Not too bad. But for the most part, I think you were pretty integral in developing that show, in that you were like the official headliner for the first 6 months, man. Not
the official host.
Host, but here's the thing. So when I choose someone to host, and this is how I wanted it from the beginning, I wanted to make sure to choose someone that really does have a lot of time, and that is really good at their craft, or at least gives a shit. And you embodied that for sure, dude.
Oh, thanks.
You give a shit. You give many shits. It's
admirable. So many shits. Especially after we're doing the Greenblatts.
Oh, yeah.
This pastrami.
I would definitely recommend the prosciutto panini on sourdough. Sorry, rosemary sourdough. Dude totally upselled me. I went for it, and I gotta say, I'm not sure if I tasted the rosemary. It's all right, though. You try it out next time you're here. You tell me. But, yeah, no, I really can't.
You can't what?
I can't say that word.
Say
That's
what?
For what?
Were you about to thank me?
I can't express to you how happy it makes me that you agreed to host for that many shows, and just to not be a jerk, dude. You were always very forthcoming about answering questions, and like I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. I think
when you're new into comedy, it's scary.
Well, I think it's
especially at the store, dude. As you know,
right,
been around there forever.
But it's very like the way I approached stand up when I was first getting started. I have regrets about because I was trying to be too cool for school,
right?
And there's no. At this point, I don't think there's any place for that. If you want to be a comic, you have to accept that we're all in this together.
Right.
And there's no need to be standoffish or a dick to people. Just be cool. Just be nice.
It really comes down to that. Just be cool, man.
Yeah.
To everyone. Because why not? Like, this is so hard to do anyway. We really don't need the extra stress of being assholes to each other.
Yeah.
And truthfully, you can get a lot done when you're nice to people. It's amazing. Contrary to most people's belief, you don't have to be working by yourself on 100% of things for people to respect you as an artist. In fact, they probably respect you more if you collaborate. Right?
Yeah. I think collaboration is very important. I am sort of a even in general, I'm sort of an isolationist a little bit. Like I'm a bit of a homebody. I tend to do stuff on my own a lot, but it's so important to socialize and work with other people, and I always cherish opportunities and seek them out more now because of experiences I've had where I try and reach out to other people and work with them and write with them. I love the feeling of being in a writer's room and the collaborative atmosphere of it. I love a good just hanging out and writing with somebody, because you're always going to have blind spots in your own artistic values and your viewpoint. So it's nice to have somebody else to bounce stuff off of, and they're going to think of things that you never would have thought of potentially.
Right, because your perspective and their perspective are just informed by two very different things.
Right.
Different lives.
Yeah.
So it's like adding, more hands on, more eyes on. Like, there's nothing bad about that. So
No.
Take note, everybody. I know it's an easy trap to fall into because I've fallen into it before as well. But work with other people. It's better for everyone in the long run. Really is. Mm-hmm. And if you don't believe me, come check out the Long Beach Laughing. There's no way I could have grown that on my own. So, Jay, I want to...
That counts. Just say it.
Fuck it. I want to thank you again.
You already did it. That's 2.5.
Such a struggle.
2.5 for anyone
struggle.
counting. I think I'm counting for sure, and everybody else should be counting at home. Just take tally marks. That's what you should.
If you want to turn this into a drinking game, we don't promote that. But
no, I promote it.
Fuck it.
I promote it. I'm an enabler.
There you go. So every time
Always
I say
have
thank
been.
you, go for it.
That's 3.5.
Just be quiet. So, man, I have never realized how complimentary I am. That's not true. I do realize that. It's just I'm very hyper aware of it right now. Anyhow, not enough people know about you. I don't know if I'm going to be crossing a boundary here or not, but I don't think I am. I think it's interesting. It's not said enough.
Crossing a boundary that you didn't ask me about before the podcast.
I mean,
I'm intrigued to hear what's going to come out of your mouth. I don't know what it could be, because I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's any boundaries to be crossed.
Famous last words. What is your real name, Jay?
Oh, Jerry Thomas
That's
Light
right.
III.
Who else's mind is blown? Mine was the first time I realized that. I think I knew you for at least 8 months before I realized you were Jerry and not
the
Jay.
podcast to come to if you want to find out people's real names. Like it's a big deal.
Totally is.
Walks of life.
That's right. By the way, my real name's Matt. Is it? Who is that? Who is that on the camera right now, or on the mic right now? That wasn't me. Certainly wasn't me. So, where did you grow up?
I grew up outside of Dallas, Texas. I moved around a lot when I was very young.
Yeah.
I was born in New Orleans. My parents, my mom is from there, and my whole mom's side of the family is from New Orleans, and they've since scattered throughout much of the South. I got a lot of relatives in all over the Gulf Coast. Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. Then my dad was from Little Rock, Arkansas. He went to college and medical school at Tulane, And my parents met when my dad was in med school and my mom was in nursing school. And then I was born in New Orleans. My dad was in the Navy. He was assigned to work at a aircraft carrier stationed out of San Diego. So we moved to San Diego for about 5 years.
As a doctor? Or
Yeah, he was a flight surgeon
Very cool.
on the now decommissioned USS Kitty Hawk.
Right on, man.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So,
So I lived in San Diego for about 5 years. And you had a question.
well, now, I mean, yes, you can. I was going to say, so your mom was a nurse, just to clarify.
Yeah.
Your dad was a flight surgeon. Was your mom in the Navy as well?
No,
No?
Mom was not. Mom was not in the Navy.
Okay.
My dad was the only one, and so we moved after he did 2 tours. He was out during the Persian Gulf War, and then after that he was put in the reserves. We moved to San Antonio, Texas. He worked out there. There's an Air Force base out there. I believe he was working in around there, but I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to claim something that I don't know is true or not. And then
We fact check everything here on Walks of Life.
Yes.
For the record.
Of course, that's why you fact check my name.
That's
you fact
right.
check. You're gonna fact check my addresses.
That's right.
Credit card numbers.
That's
so
right.
he
Hang around for the average.
was in the inactive reserves eventually, and then we moved to outside of Dallas, a little suburb called Colleyville, sort of in what's known as the mid-cities of the Metroplex. And then he was stationed. Yeah, he was inactive, and I grew up there. I was there from 8 till. I mean, I stopped living at my parents' house essentially when I was 18. I would still go back for summers between semesters of college. But I grew up in a little suburb of Dallas.
Right on.
That's
I
where I
mean,
was at.
were you eager to get out of there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was
Yeah.
it? I imagine. Was it very Texas-like? Because like you have elements of a Southern gentleman to you, but I would not consider you like a Texas boy or anything. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't
Right.
have any problem with Texas as a place,
No, it's a beautiful place.
but I wanted to get out of my town.
I feel you.
I wanted to get out of my little city, my little suburban slice. I felt, when I was applying to colleges, I went to, there are a lot of places in Texas that I applied to, and most of those were either in the Dallas-Fort Worth area or very close to it, a few hours drive. But my number one school was a school in North Carolina, Elon, and I applied there, and I really liked it because it had the programs I was looking for, and it was in a beautiful part of the state. North Carolina is just a beautiful state. If you've never been, make a trek. It's a beautiful drive. But I went out there, and I loved it, and I fell in love with it, and I got in, and I was like, cool. I would like to go somewhere for school where I don't have the chance of my parents dropping in on me unexpected.
Right on.
Because my mom is a great lady, but she was definitely in the helicopter mom kind of vein.
Yeah. She always bugging you.
Always just involved in stuff.
Barging in the door unannounced, stuff like that, or
Not quite so much that, but very involved in my life, my extracurricular life, in my school life.
well, that's kind of nice. So she loved you.
Well,
That's
yeah,
nice.
but I didn't think of it in those
I bet,
terms
yeah.
at the time. I was
Yeah, it
a
feels
shitty
suffocated.
teenager. I felt suffocated. Exactly. I was like, "What are you doing? Why are you acting like this?"
Let me be me, Mom. Right. No, I get it, man. I think we all go through that. It's weird how time informs your perspective on things and how you can look back on the same situations and see like the errors or at least the changes in your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like they were pretty involved in your life and supportive of you.
Well, my mom was. My dad was not as much, just because he worked a lot. My dad
Yeah.
was working as a vascular surgeon, so he was working all sorts of crazy hours. He was on call at a number of different hospitals, private practice. So as I got older, he was a bit more involved just because his time sort of opened up. But tons of nights when my dad would get home late and I didn't see him, and he would have to be on call on weekends. Yeah. So I did a lot of like sports and stuff growing up, like baseball and a little bit of football. But my mom was always the one who was like involved in the team, and my dad would be, because my dad just couldn't be.
Right. I understand.
Yeah.
So I mean, with their lives pretty entwined in the healthcare industry, I imagine they wanted that for you as well, or is that just I'm making a huge assumption there.
I don't think it's that huge.
I feel like most people in healthcare.
I wanted to work in medicine for a while.
Did you?
Yeah. I thought for years that I was going to wind up being a doctor or something. I really wanted to be a pediatrician for a long time. Yeah. And then, because I had these books growing up that were these gigantic, just like medical encyclopedias.
Were they illustrated?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. I had something similar.
So I had one that was an anatomy book, and then one that was a book of all the diseases.
Yeah.
And so I remember I was reading through those a lot as a kid, and was big into science and science fair kind of stuff, and I really liked it just seemed like it was the right move. And even when I remember at one point I got actively told by my mom, hey, you shouldn't be a pediatrician because they have to deal with, not only got to deal with sick kids, but you also have to deal with horrible, overbearing parents.
It's true.
Do you really want to do that? And I was like, ugh. And so then, I still considered some of that for a little bit, but then I was always bad at math, and as you go on in science just becomes an extension of math.
Right.
And I hated that, so I didn't even think that it was going to be worth it for me. So I just sort of gave up on all that.
When do you think that change in your mind happened?
About 13.
Yeah.
And then it was fully cemented that I wasn't going to be involved in any kind of science or medical capacity about the time I was 15, chemistry.
Yeah, and so around that time, if you're saying to hell with this stuff, did you have something opposite in mind that you wanted to do?
No. Excuse me. No, not specifically. No. Was always that was around the age when I started getting involved in theater.
Right on.
And so I did stuff. I always liked making people laugh, but for many years I never thought of anything in comedy as a potential career. But I was the kind of kid who I would do school assignments, and I was doing gifted and talented classes, so it was stuff. I was really trying to be the person who avoided just having to write essays for every final project, and I would be asking my teachers if I could make a video instead, and that was the sort of vein that I was in my regular classes. And then I was taking a lot of theater classes by the time I was in high school. I started in 8th grade, and then Were you super into theater and movies and stuff before this? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
for sure.
So it felt pretty natural.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, and I was doing, 8th grade, I was a dog. I was Max the dog in How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And
beautiful role.
It was great. It was a great role. And I did, in high school, I was in theater classes. I did oral interp, which is competitive acting and public speaking. I was a state finalist in this event called Original Oratory, my junior and senior year of high school, which is an event where you write a persuasive speech.
Were you on a debate team?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
I sense that. Only people that have been on a forensics team or a debate team recognize those terms.
Forensics. Yeah.
Exactly. If
Texas,
you know what forensics means.
Shout out to the Texas Forensics Association.
CSI, then you've probably been on a debate team or club or something.
Yeah. But
no judgment.
Because that's the thing, is I had a lot of friends who were very good at the actual performance and playing characters, and they would get all the roles in the productions. And I never got any of those, and I was bummed out about that for a long time. But I was good at writing my own stuff and performing my own stuff. And this is all stuff that, now I look back and I see that, and I'm like, oh, this all makes sense. This is all, leading up to the path. But I was, I was the kind of kid where again, doing stand-up, or anything in comedy as a career never occurred to me. But I was doing stuff that would lead anyone to believe that, oh, this could be something that he winds up getting into. I did this thing called Pep Boys my senior year and junior year of high school.
Is that like a improv group? Or?
No, it's a spirit squad. So football is huge in Texas.
Very different than an improv group.
Basically, every school has anything that's related to football. They have big pep rallies, and there's like cheerleading and the dance team, and then most of them have some sort of like a spirit squad. They're all called different things. We were the Pep Boys.
Cool.
And what we would do, I mean, we'd be on the fields and like cheering and not really doing cheerleader-y cheers, but we would do, we had megaphones and we would do push-ups whenever we scored, and we'd run flags across the field. But our biggest thing was we would, at every pep rally, we would do a sketch.
Very cool.
That was basically making fun of football players and doing like a fictionalized version of the game for that week. So
being every theater kid's hero.
And we had essentially, well, the way it was divided up was we had two factions within the Pep Boys. Mm-hmm. There was the kids who were in theater, which was about half of us, and so we all knew how to like write and perform stuff. And then there were the kids who were close with the football players, and so they got us all the dirt and intel on what was going on in their lives, and then we would turn it into sketches.
Yeah.
And then, that was a big part of my high school experience.
Dude, it sounds like that was the direct connection between you and the next step, becoming a full-on entertainer.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people that I talk to that are pretty good at comedy, and that I respect as comedians, had no real idea that they were going to do it necessarily, but it feels like there's plenty of breadcrumbs leading up to their ultimate decision to go into stand-up. So if you're out there wondering, just
I'd always been a big fan of comedy. I remember I would stay up late and watch Comedy Central. I watched a lot of Insomniac with Dave Attell and Friday Night Stand-Up, because I was also a lonely kid. I didn't really have friend groups that I would go and hang out with. Like, I would be at home on a lot of weekend nights until I got to high school, basically. And, I'd feel sad because I felt sort of alone, and I was bullied a lot, and until I sort of found a group of people who I could hang out with. But I would, stay up late, and I would watch stand-up, and it fascinated me.
I bet, man.
Sorry, what did you say?
Oh, I just said thank you, Comedy Central.
I was 4.5.
Fucking hell, that's right.
I just wanted to make sure you said thank you.
That was a trick. I was like, why is he so determined to get me to clarify what I just barely slipped out of my mouth?
Well, also, I mean, I want to hear what you're saying.
Okay.
Not even just to get you on your thank yous. But like, we're having a conversation. If you're mumbling, I can't understand what you're saying.
It's true. It's a very good point for everybody out there. For a long time, I mumbled. It is important to be clear and direct. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But enough on that.
This is such an interesting podcast. The way you really do.
I know, dude. It examines parts of me that I don't think most people regularly catch on.
Well, it's like you're trying to. I feel like there's an alternate reality where you're a motivational speaker somewhere.
I can see that.
And you have you're running like an inspirational Instagram account and just full of memes that are all like, it's going to be okay. Just move on.
I mean, there's a part of me that has a little bit of Tony Robbins-like qualities. So I'm sure that's not too big of a stretch.
What Tony Robbins-like qualities do you have?
I mean, I'd like to think I'm optimistic. I'd like to think I can be charismatic if I need to. And I'd like to think that, I genuinely want everybody to come away from listening to this with some sort of inspiration.
Okay.
And some sort of motivation to do something better for their own life.
You know what Tony Robbins doesn't say, though?
Thank you.
No, but
that's
5.5.
Go on.
But he was going to say, he doesn't say, I'd like to think. He just is.
He is. And he's
Tony Robbins just is. You ever see that documentary about him?
No, I've been meaning to.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Every time
it's so interesting.
Him, I just think of Martin Martins now. Like, my favorite version of Tony Robbins is Martin Martins. Even though they're totally separate people. I'm just saying.
Martin Martins is great. Stephen Randolph is a great
awesome.
comic,
Yeah.
a good friend, and he does this amazing character called Martin Martins. Look it up. He's got a whole series of YouTube videos and Instagram videos. It's just, it's so perfect.
It really
Just the
is.
perfect encapsulation of what a motivational speaker is.
Not only what a motivational speaker is, but what a motivational speaker needs to be, I will say.
I don't think it needs to be. I think it's what a motivational speaker shouldn't be.
You're stepping on my points, Jay. Let's get back on track. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, it's a very good point.
We should have kept this I'm just kidding count.
No. I'm good on the thank you count.
6.5.
Oh, my God. I'm good on the... I'm not even going to acknowledge
You're
it.
coming up on it. I
Let's-
mean, we're about to hit the over. I should have taken the over. I shouldn't have been so willing to give you the benefit of the doubt.
But was that a trick to get me to say the T word again?
No.
Because I almost did.
No.
Well, it should have been. I don't even know where we were a minute ago. We were talking about stand-up, the Pep Boys, being a
exactly
lonely
where we
kid
were a minute
watching
ago, yeah.
Comedy Central at night.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch Freaks and Geeks?
Yeah. I watched Freaks and Geeks.
Oh, man, my mind was blown the other day because I realized, I believe it was 2 days ago, that it was the 20-year anniversary of it being premiered. And it just blows
Has it been
my
that
mind
long?
that it's been that long.
Wow.
1999. Or 98. No, 99 has to be. But yeah, 1999, I believe, September 25th. I remember watching that show, though, and there were so many things that reminded me of my life experience. And there's one scene in particular that I posted on my Facebook that I feel like most comedians would be able to relate to.
The scene of Martin watching the...
Gary Shandling.
Yeah.
Yep, being a latchkey kid. to the
That's not his
max.
actual name. That's the actor's name, Martin Starr. What's the character's name on that show? I forget.
No, it is Martin.
Is it on the show, too?
Hold on.
I know the actor's Martin Starr.
Sam Levine. I don't know why I can't think of. Damn it! No.
That's not really that important.
Oh yes, it is.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that's the scene. All
Bill. It's Bill.
Bill, that's
Bill
right.
Haverchuck.
But all the
My bad.
people who watch that scene, who are comics, I think identify with that scene a lot.
Yeah, because I think. I mean, you kind of leaned into it too. Were you much of a latchkey kid, or just kind of
No,
home
I wasn't a
alone?
latchkey kid, just kind of a lonely kid.
I feel you.
Yeah.
Definitely had those nights too, where I'd watch lots of Comedy Central, and then that would stop at like 2 or 3 in the morning. I'd start watching the Weather Channel and whatever else, public access television, until everything started getting back on. But I feel like a lot of comedians definitely have those moments when they were younger, or had those moments when they were younger, just being alone with no one else to entertain you but the TV.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. Watch that scene if you get a chance. Look up YouTube.
You should watch the whole
Bill.
show.
You should. You should.
It's only
watch the
one
entire
season. One season, 13 episodes.
Two seasons. Wasn't it?
No.
Because it was canceled twice. Came back at least twice. I want to say it was.
Sure
2
about
seasons.
that?
Yeah, for sure it was canceled twice. Because I remember.
We're going
being
to double check
ecstatic.
this. We're going to fact check.
Let's do it.
Your official fact checking podcast.
Oh, you're right. It was one season.
Yep,
18
I knew it.
episodes. I could have swore.
Yeah, they persuaded him to broadcast the 3 remaining episodes.
So it was just canceled one time. Well, my bad.
Yeah.
All the same, amazing show. I remember being so ecstatic about that and lending so many people that box set that I can't even tell you where my box set of Freaks and Geeks is. It's just somewhere out there. So if you have that and you're listening to this, please return it. So let's keep going. Who inspires you comedically, man? Or just in life? It doesn't have to be just comedians.
Do you mean
What inspires you,
now
in fact?
or over the course of my life? Because there's different answers for that.
I mean, I meant now, but I kind of want to hear both. Who are some figures that have been
Well, one of my
inspirational?
biggest comedic inspirations is one of my best friends, this dude Parker Searfoss. He is one of my oldest friends. He's the guy who got me into stand-up,
Yeah?
as far as performing it. He bought a copy of the Comedy Bible. Shout out Judy Carter. And that book is basically just a guide on getting started in stand-up. And it recommends that you get a buddy to do comedy with. And I remember he got that book our senior year of high school, and he was reading it, and he was like, oh, it says I should get a comedy buddy. I need one of those. And I volunteered. And so we were doing stuff. You know, he was in theater and Pep Boys and stuff, so I knew him. But that was like a different
You didn't officially know you were
thing.
going to be a comedian still. You were just signing up to be his comedy buddy.
Yeah. I just started writing jokes, and we got moleskin notebooks, and we were writing jokes together, and now he's not really... He doesn't do stand-up anymore.
No?
But he doesn't even live in L.A. anymore. He moved back to Texas. But he's one of the funniest people I've ever met. He's great in conversation. He's great off the cuff, great ideas guy. And he is one of like my oldest inspirations. Like, I always wanted to be as funny as him. And there's, plenty of times like that. I remember my grandpa told a lot of jokes. Was a really funny dude, really likable, really charismatic. He's an inspiration. One of my all-time favorite comics, and I remember one of the first albums I ever bought was Patton Oswalt's Werewolves and Lollipops.
Great album.
But I remember one of my all-time absolute favorite comics is Kyle Kinane, and I remember I read about him as someone who'd opened for Patton, and I was like, okay, because I liked Patton Oswalt a ton. And I still think he's a great comic, but this was like at the height of my Oswalt fandom. And his debut album came out. I was reading about it on like the AV Club or something, and they had in their blurb, he opened for Patton Oswalt, and his album's great. And I was like, oh, okay, check it out. And I listened to that. And I remember I listened to it by myself, and I was dying laughing. And then I remember this was in college, and me and a bunch of my friends were out for some long weekend. I think it was Easter weekend. We were out hanging out with friends of ours at someone's lake house, and we were just having, drinking out on the back porch and talking about stuff. And I was like, hey, I got this stand-up album that we should listen to. And it was the weirdest thing because I put it on, and then everybody got silent on the patio. And we just listened to this album in entirety.
That's amazing.
And it was so... Because that first album... Kinane's a great comic, and he's one of my all-time favorites. Definitely an inspiration. But Death of the Party is such a beautiful comedy album. And the way he tells stories and the way he layers in jokes throughout is just something that I really, really admire. Other comedic inspirations to me, Brian Moses and the Roast Battle and Jeff Ross. I owe a lot to them.
Awesome. Not
even just in a professional standpoint, but from being there to help shepherd me along in unlocking different, accessing a part of myself comedically on stage that I never thought that I could access. I appreciate that every day. And those guys also inspire me a lot.
I bet, man. Those guys are such phenomenal comedians in their own right.
Mm-hmm.
I've been lucky enough to see them in the original room a couple times, just kind of relaxing and doing stuff off the cuff, and it's amazing. Those minds in general, I'm sure, are super sharp.
Yeah.
Just by nature of doing the roast battle every Tuesday.
Yeah. Brody Stevens really inspired me too. Brody was such a great performer.
Brody's
and
funny.
He was so in the moment, and that's something I really struggle with, is being in the moment. And I struggle with it less now, but watching him, just a force of nature, and always really inspired me watching his sets.
He had some pretty crazy responses from the crowd, like considering a lot of that stuff was off the top of his head.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would never be able to know because he had the formulas, the mechanics, whatever he did, his magic was on point. I remember one time seeing him at a secret show, Brian Redband's secret show at the Ice House. Happens pretty regularly on Fridays. You should go check that out. Good show.
Speaking of magic, by the way. Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
No, go on.
No. I interrupted you.
Well, All right, but remember this magic point, because
I will.
I'm curious. And that brings up another point about magic. I think most comedians were into magic at some point, but we'll get there. Yeah. So the thing is, I was watching him over at the Ice House for this Death Squad Secrets show, and he used to do this thing where he knew the mascots for like every high school in the U.S. apparently, and you would call out wherever you were from, city-wise, he would ask, and he would be able to identify the city and match it up with the right mascot.
Yeah.
Right? And
Colleyville Heritage, the Panthers. You
somehow,
got it.
some fucking how he knew. And I remember watching and just being amazed by how he was being able to, like, off the cuff, pull this information from somewhere and do it accurately. And it came over to me. He made eye contact with me, and he said, "Where did you go to high school?" And I don't know why, but it didn't occur to me to give him the location so much as the name of the actual school, which was Santiago. So instead of telling him the city I came from, I just shouted out as loud as I could, "Santiago!" And without missing a beat, he still fucking got it. And he said, "Santiago, that's in Chile." And he fucking got this giant uproar from the audience because he somehow took this disastrous situation and turned it into a good one.
It wasn't
was
even
just-
a disaster, though.
No, I'm just speaking melodramatically. He was really awesome as a performer, and I just remember seeing that moment and just laughing so hard because he took my fuck up and still ran with it.
It wasn't even you fucking up, though.
Well, you know what I mean. Me misspeaking didn't matter. He still was
He was
so
great.
on point and such a great performer that he was able to roll with it. And yeah.
So speaking
He was,
of magic,
I'm sorry. Go
oh
on,
sorry,
Magic.
you go. You want to gush about Brody more?
No,
He's great.
He was. Give me more about magic.
So I used to do magic growing up. I did. I was into it. I think you're probably spot on. But there's a book. There's this comic magician that I really liked. His name was Jay Sankey. And the first comedy book I ever bought was a book by him called Zen and the Art of Stand-Up Comedy. And I remember being really into Jay when I was doing magic. And then when I started getting interested in doing stand-up, I saw his book. And I was like, oh, I like this guy's magic. I wonder what his book is like. His book's a great book. So simple. So effective. One of my books that I still have in my comedy library to this day.
That's awesome, man. Do you feel like there's benefit to be gained from reading those books? I know some people are pretty adamantly against comedy classes and books, but
there's
my
a
own
difference
thought-
between classes and books, though.
Yeah, explain.
Well, books are stuff you read on your own. Classes are you giving money to somebody to teach you to do something that you're very capable of doing yourself. But I think I've taken comedy classes. I don't think for certain disciplines you need them. Like stand-up, I don't think you need to take stand-up class necessarily. I think you can figure it all out on your own. It'll take time, but you can. But taking a class, if you work well in that environment and you're scared of doing open mics, which if you want to actually pursue stand-up, you got to get over that. But it's essentially an open mic that you're paying for several weeks.
It's a very good point. Never thought about that, but you are essentially paying just to be in there.
Yeah, and you're also
you're
also paying to have somebody teach you certain aspects of how
structure.
Joke structure and the stuff to do on stage, simple things like moving the mic behind you or away from you. I remember thinking, but reading these books anyways. Like one of the first books I ever read, and this was even before I even wanted to do stand-up. This is an interesting one. So I was real lonely, right? And I had a lot of friends. So when I started having friends, but in high school, all of my friends started dating people very quickly, and I got very girl crazy. And I remember I did a lot of reading of websites like becomeaplayer.com.
Oh, yeah.
And I was reading like mystery method books and stuff.
Fucking pickup artists.
And there's this book called Double Your Dating that I read.
Yeah.
And the guy, David D'Angelo, was an advocate of what he called the. He's like, if you want to get girls to like you got to be cocky and you got to be funny. And the thing he recommended for figuring, he's like, if you're not funny, read this book and it'll teach you all about jokes. And it was Comedy Writing Secrets.
And do you think you actually learned a lot from that book?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, dude, the book is actually a really good, it's a good book on comedy writing.
Everybody go to Amazon, quick.
Yeah, Comedy
These are
Writing
the
Secrets,
secrets.
Mel Helitzer. And I forget, he's got because Mel Helitzer, I believe, is dead, but he has a co-writer who has updated the book. It's on the 3rd edition now. But it's a great book. Teaches you all about joke craft and wordplay and the different ways that you can get jokes and different ways to use jokes in all aspects of life. There's a stand-up chapter. There's a chapter on like writing greeting cards.
What?
There's a chapter on public speaking. There's all sorts of stuff.
All right, you heard it here first. That
Television
book
and movie writing. Yeah.
is solid gold, so go pick it up.
And it's the color gold.
Why wouldn't it be?
Of course.
Why wouldn't it be?
It's gold.
That's pretty rad, man. I know this is like at least the 6th or 7th time that you've mentioned that book around me. And in classic fashion, I've not picked it up. But I will, hopefully. And I will read it one day.
Hopefully. Probably.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that someday, probably, maybe, I'll read it. Hopefully.
I don't have a problem with committing to anything. Anyhow.
Thank you.
No, I mean, there's so many different ways to skin a cat that I know it's pretty tired saying, but it's pretty tired saying for a reason. There really is a million ways to become a comedian, too, and why not, man?
Mm-hmm.
So what if people out there give you shit for looking at a book? Fuck them. If it helps you on your journey, that's the only thing that matters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
you gotta do what's right for you.
Exactly, man.
I think there's, especially in your early years, reading about the craft is important, and learning about the craft is important.
Do you think the history is important?
Not necessarily.
No.
I don't think you need to know where you've come from in order to get to where you are. I think there's a lot of comics back that from sort of the classics era that you should get to know a little bit. You know, like I think everybody should watch a little bit of Carlin, a little bit of Richard Pryor, a little bit of Bill Hicks, a little bit of what pains me to say, I haven't watched any of him, but Lenny Bruce. One of my favorite comedy albums of all time is Andrew Dice Clay, The Day the Laughter Died.
That is such an important and
But
weird concept.
it's an important and weird album. Yeah. But it's something that I remember watching somebody talk a lot about Dice. And I was like, you know what? I've seen him on stage on the door a couple times. I've never seen like any of his old stuff. And so the album that everybody seemed to say you got to listen to is The Day the Laughter Died. And it's just such an interesting, just like the way he attacks, literally is like attacking the crowd on that album and trying to walk people is fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's not. I have a feeling that more comedians will enjoy it than just regular comedy fans.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all the more reason for you to go check it out. Prove me wrong. It's pretty interesting. There's not many other albums out there where someone is willing to show you them failing. This one, Dice was like, fuck it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes him fucking legend.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So I feel like we've nerded out a lot on comedy, and we could probably keep going for a couple more hours, but just for the sake of having to wind down a little bit.
How far on the questions are we right now?
We're almost done, believe it or not.
Yeah?
Yeah, believe it or not. We've kind of stuck to it in a weird way.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
You didn't even have to talk about things going off the rails. We got it. We got there.
No, dude. Just relaxing and just doing your best, inevitably, turns out great products. Turns out something I'm learning more and more about as the days and weeks go on. But with that in mind, while I'm being melodramatic, let's get
while
at
you're
something.
talking like you're writing to your lover during the war.
It does sound like Greg Giraldo's bit, didn't it? Dear Marie, It is very sweetie in the dessert. Don't fuck anybody while I'm gone. Paraphrasing. But yeah, so beyond the comedy, man, I know you as a person. You're a pretty interesting dude.
Thanks.
Let's give everybody else a little bit of a glimpse. Like, what do you do to decompress? Or, like, do you have hobbies? I don't know if you can call them hobbies.
I mean, I have other stuff that I do.
You do.
I like to run. I like to exercise. Running in particular is something I've done for a long time. I've never been much of like, people ask me if I'm like a marathon runner. I'm more of like a short, like middle distance runner. I'll do a 5K pretty regularly, just as a good exercise. I like to do high intensity short workouts, do yoga. I like to meditate. I go between doing just meditation at home, like 10 minutes a day is where I'm at regularly right now in the mornings. And I will go to a float tank once a month.
Very cool.
Good old float lab, sensory deprivation tank. And that is such an important thing for me to do.
What's that like? Because I don't.
It kind of depends person to person, but I mean, the general experience is you go into a tank of heavily salinated water, and you have in earplugs, and it's totally dark, pitch black, and you're just kind of floating there, and the water's room temperature, and you sit there. Or not room temperature, it's body temperature. So you feel like you're just there. And it took me, I've been going to float tanks for a while now. It's probably been almost 2 years, maybe longer than 2 years since I've been starting to go into float tanks. But I try and go once a month. It really helps me get out of my head by being so in my head that I'm just thinking about stuff that I'm doing in my everyday life, stuff that I'm doing on stage, stuff that I'm doing off stage, relationships with people, and really you put it all under a microscope because there's no other distractions. And so I think that's an important part of my, not daily, because I don't do it daily, but my process of being sort of
Creative
leveled out
person.
emotionally, yeah, and
Right.
creatively, yeah.
Right on, man. When you're in there, I mean, do you start visualizing things?
Sometimes.
Because I imagine being around no other senses than touch, and I mean, is it dark in there?
I mean, you're not even really touching anything, though. You feel.
You're in the water, though,
Yeah,
right?
but you don't feel the water
Yeah.
because it's body temperature.
That's crazy.
I've
You
definitely
think this-
hallucinated in those.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And not in like a bad trip kind of way, but in like a vision quest kind of way, maybe.
Yeah, and mostly it's nothing crazy. It's like fractals or patterns that I
Okay.
see. Sometimes the closest thing I've ever done to like seeing something is I've seen a face talking to me before,
That's crazy.
but I don't remember what it said. But I'll also do, in the meditations, I'll also do a lot of, and into the tank too, a lot of active visualization of things. And I did it for a while, and I kind of stopped, and now I'm getting back into it. But visualizing things like being passed at clubs or performing for full audiences. That's the kind of
those
stuff.
are things that you have as goals to attain pretty regular. I mean, like, do you have any goals that you want to achieve
Yeah.
within the next, let's say, 2 years?
Yeah, being passed at clubs.
Yeah, being past clubs.
I'd like to, sell a feature script. I'd like to be working on more television shows. I mean, my ultimate goal at the end of the day, because writing is nice for the income. It's very fun to write on television shows, having written on a handful at this point, and that being my main source of income now. But I'd like to be able to be a touring stand-up comic and make money off of that, and make enough money to live off of that. I don't know if I'll be able to do that in 2 years. It'd be cool.
You
but
never know. Why not set the
exactly.
goal?
I never know. And I'm sort of a goals-oriented person. I like systems. I have in my apartment next to my desk where I write, I have a big whiteboard where I have a list of, as this year has gone on, a list of monthly goals. This is actually, as we're recording this will be the first month that I didn't officially achieve the goal, but I made big progress on it, which is nice.
Yeah, you can't discount that, man.
No, of course not.
If it's the only month that you haven't achieved your goals, I think you're doing pretty damn good.
Yeah, feel good.
Yeah.
And then, I like to think about stuff in sort of big picture, but not obsessing over the big picture so much. I think it's important.
So, I mean, with that in mind, it sounds like you're pretty happy with where things are in life and where you are in life.
Yeah.
Do you think if you could go back in time, maybe and tell yourself, your younger self, I should say, some bit of advice or wisdom?
Oh, to go back in time and tell my older self?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. You don't know what time works like in this construct
going back
that I'm
in
presenting.
time, yes.
You don't know which universe I'm talking about.
I can guess.
All right. No, if you could go back in time and tell your younger self
Uh-huh.
a bit of wisdom or advice, does anything stick out and come to mind?
Wisdom or advice?
Doesn't even have to be comedy related.
I would imagine it probably wouldn't be. Don't care so much about what other people think of you.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I'm really now just starting to grasp that doesn't matter. It's been a long time. It's something that I've really wanted to do for as long as I can remember. Not, going back to first trying to make friends and being bullied, and I wish I could have not cared about that. I wish I didn't care about being popular or being liked, because trying to achieve those things really set me up to have kind of a miserable go of things. And I'm finally starting to really grasp what it means and what it actually feels like in practice to not care about what everybody thinks about me all the time. And to recognize that it's not necessarily about me, and making it all about me and trying to please everybody and be everything for everyone all the time is not only exhausting for me, but it's exhausting for everybody else around me. And it's impossible to do that and be happy. I think that getting to this point, there's still miles to go, but I'm glad that I'm at least finally at that point now mentally. And I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm excited to see where it goes.
Right on, man.
Excited to see how it affects me creatively and how it affects me with interpersonal relationships and in my everyday life. But I definitely feel a change in a way that it's one of those things you can't really chase. That's the other problem to it. Is it's so hard to not care about things, because if you think about it all the time, then you're caring too much and you're putting too much on it, and it's just one of those things that, like, it hits you one day. It's a switch that flips, and that's it. That's all there is. I'm sure even if I went back in time and told myself that, it wouldn't change anything.
I think you're right. I think it's something that you have to come to realize on your own. Like you said, like, that switch has to be flipped.
Mm-hmm.
The only way to get to it seems to be through deep introspection, or going throughout your own work, working on yourself.
Yeah.
Well, dude, if the short time I've known you is any indication of your future, I think you're going to be a pretty cool and successful dude. So keep doing what you're doing. It's been awesome to see you grow, even just in the short time I know you, and see you turn out so much stuff. So
Thanks, man. Same to you.
keep doing it, man. Very nice to see you. Very nice to meet you. Very nice to know you. Just got to say that for the record.
Yeah, I know. I know you got to say it. You say it all the time. But it's just, I feel the same way about you.
Oh, thanks,
It's
man.
been very interesting. It's very interesting watching you grow and change and grow up.
Yeah, no, you've definitely seen me do a lot more growing, I think, than a lot of people have in my life, and I wouldn't change anything, man. Definitely had to live the way I lived, and things happen for a reason. I really, truly believe that now.
Yeah.
Before we sign off, do you have any closing words, a favorite quote, something you want to share, a book that everybody should check out?
Anything else besides books or anything else I can recommend?
Whatever you want, man. I've been having everybody, honestly, end with one particular song that is meaningful to you.
Okay.
So if you want to end, give us one.
No, I'm going to give you all the things. I'm going to recommend all sorts of stuff. I love recommending things.
You know, while you're there, because we talked about it, why don't you recommend that book about meditation for everybody?
Oh.
Mindfulness.
Yeah. The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh. It's a great book. Great, simple book on how to meditate and how to meditate in your everyday life. A lot of he puts the phrase as washing the dishes to wash the dishes. And this is sort of very practical book on meditation. So that's not even the book I was going to recommend. I'm going to recommend something else entirely besides that. But everybody should read that. It's a great book, especially if you're looking to get into meditating. It's the simplest book on meditation I've ever read. It makes a lot of sense. It's very practical. I love practical shit. Quote. This is something I'm not going to say because I don't want to butcher it. But go read the Man in the Arena speech from Teddy Roosevelt. I have a very simplified version of that, paraphrased from somebody else, Brene Brown, who's also a great speaker. You should go watch her TED Talk on shame. She's fascinating, a great speaker. But I have a very paraphrased version of that tattooed on me. That's how much I care about that quote and that speech. But the Man in the Arena speech is fascinating, and if you're in especially in any sort of creative outlet, it's worth reading and worth watching. Books, I would highly recommend. One of my favorite books of all time is A Confederacy of Dunces. If you never read it, go read it. It builds to such an amazing conclusion. It's so funny. It's one of the only books that I remember laughing out loud at as I was reading it. It's fascinating. It's a great book. And song. It's interesting. There's this Pitchfork poll out right now that's like the top 10 songs and top 10 albums of the decade. Have you seen that? You're a big music guy.
But I'm willing to bet I know all the songs on it.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, no, it's a reader poll, so you're picking it. And I was trying to narrow down my top 10 songs and top 10 albums of the decade.
Well, we're going to put you on the spot and ask for...
Well, the one I would recommend is Dance Yourself Clean by LCD Sound System. LCD Sound System is my favorite band, but that song in particular, I mean, if we're talking from the decade, it's a great song. What I love about LCD Sound System is that they have a wide array of songs as far as the subject matter it covers. So if you want a happy one, Dance Yourself Clean is a great one. If you want a sad one, listen to Someone Great. Also a great LCD Sound System song, but definitely not a happy one. Anyway, that's it.
Well, dude, I want to... Damn it.
No, we came to the under. You can say
it. Yeah, for coming out and talking with me today. It's been a pleasure, sir. I'm going to shake your hand because everybody can hear it. And, yeah, man. Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome. That's 9.5. You did it. You beat the under. We did it. Let's give ourselves a high five because they can hear that.
All right. You guys take care. See you on the next... Oh, wait. Do you want to promote your website or anything?
Yeah. I was wondering if you're going to ask that, too. I have an album that will be out. I don't know when you're releasing this, but...
Probably soon.
This album, I just recorded it, and it'll be out end of October, beginning of November. Still locking down the dates and the title, but go to my website, jlightcomedy.com. That's where you'll find it, all the info about the release when it's out. And my social media is at DietJ on Twitter and Instagram. So give me a follow, and I'll post all the stuff on there when it's on its way to being released. Oh, and check out my podcast, Blockbusting. Talk about movies that people hate and why they hate them. It's a fun time.
Check him out everywhere. He's an awesome dude. All right.
Thanks, Matt. You're an awesome dude.
All right. Thanks, Jay.